So AEW and WWE have been in a bit of a bidding war, at least in the last few months or so, and it mostly surrounds three big names in professional wrestling. We got Mercedes Moné, Will Ospreay, and Kazuchika Okada. Now, all three of them now signed with AEW. Will Ospreay signed like months ago, so it wasn't anything new. But in the last month, both Okada and Monet have signed with WWE. Mercedes Moné being the former Sasha Banks for people who don't know. The only reason I'm really talking about this, despite the fact that I do like pro wrestling, I don't talk about it a lot on, just in general, at least like on screen. And that's because pro wrestling online can get very toxic. So I try to stay away from it every now and again. But I saw this post, well, not even this post. I saw an article on Twitter from the New York Post about the bidding war, which I found pretty funny. We have it right here. WWE needs to look in the mirror after AEW star-studded free agency haul. So I'm just going to read this out here and kind of give my thoughts about it. AEW was a clear winner in pro wrestling free agency, and WWE shouldn't take that lightly. Even with the company working its way out of a downturn, AEW president Tony Khan was able to bring in the big three of Will Ospreay, Kazuchika Okada, and Mercedes Moné. These are three of the very best wrestlers in the world. The additions and the success of Revolution seem to have injected some new energy in the AEW locker room, like a pro team adding stars at the trade deadline. Ospreay noted during his promo on Dynamite the AEW rallying cry of "Restore the Feeling" as AEW looks to reinvigorate the energy and interest around the promotion. I am the feeling. That's what Ospreay said. While WWE is as hot as ever and doesn't need any of those three at the moment, the fact that none of them chose to come to the industry leader could at least give Triple H and company some pause. Because at the worst, you want to keep talent away from your closest competitor. WWE's biggest signings have been wrestlers on their way out of AEW, IG, Cody Rhodes, Jade Cargill, Shawn Spears, Brian Pillman Jr., and the fired CM Punk, Naomi being the exception. If you listen to Ospreay and Monet talk about why they signed to, well, actually, I just want to talk about this right here. And the statement of AEW getting back their energy. Because it is true, they have very much lost some of their energy from when they were like, really popping off. Like I'm thinking like late 2021, early 2022, that like era of AEW where it was just everything was very much firing on like all cylinders. It was pretty good. Some things were lacking here and there, but overall the product was really good. And nowadays, when it comes to pro wrestling, I mostly just watch WWE. With AEW, I don't really watch it. I keep up to date on some things, but overall, it's not a product that is like keeping my interest that much. Even with things going a little bit better, I have been, keeping my eyes on it more and more. But even then, I'm still, there's still not a lot of stuff keeping me interested, but I do see that their product as a whole is getting better, which is great. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, even with WWE, I've been kind of watching less and less a little bit, but I still very much have my eyes on the project because WrestleMania is coming up. It's a very big season for them. But going back to AEW, they didn't really have that great of a last year, honestly. Like the whole situation with CM Punk and all that. It just, it wasn't. You could tell there was like this chaotic energy in AEW. Also, like there weren't a lot of great programs. Honestly, there were programs that went a little too long. Programs that, like there were like superstars who were getting pushed and then not being pushed. Like Ricky Starks, like had a really good showing at the end of 2022 where he had a world title match, and then as months and months went by, he started losing momentum. He started going out of the limelight until he ended it as a tag team champion that nobody really cared about. And now he's like, I don't even know what he's doing now. Like, I don't really see him doing anything. They had a lot of things going for them at the end of 2022, even with the CM Punk stuff happening then. Like, they still had a lot of things going for them. Like, MJF was their world champion. A lot of people were excited to see where that went until it kind of petered out into nothing. It was really disappointing. And that also played a part into AEW's 2023 is that the MJF World Championship reign that they really were trying to hype up, and that a lot of fans also hyped up as well, just kind of fell flat on a lot of expectations, at least in the second half. Like, it just wasn't great. The Devil storyline wasn't great. I feel like they're kind of like coming out of the ashes now, but I feel like there's still a lot of stuff from last year that wasn't great that is still kind of there. Like, I'm gonna be honest, the Undisputed Kingdom, it's just kind of a nothing faction at this point. It probably doesn't help that MJF is injured, but it really like shows how much of like they didn't really have any plans for them, because like Adam Cole is still injured too, I'm presuming. Because I like he's not in action, or maybe they're just like saving him until MJF comes back. Like, I don't know. Like, that was like the big cliffhanger for World's End, their last pay-per-view of last year. And like nobody really cares or talks about the kingdom anymore. Like, I don't really see any online talk about it. But at the end of the day, they still got stuff going for them, and with guys like Ospreay, who, while signing months back, he still had to finish up his New Japan dates, and now he's finally like a full-fledged member of the AEW roster. He has a match with Bryan Danielson coming out, which should be really great. Okada, who isn't even a month into his, run with AEW, is already a champion. Mercedes Moné is, she's not going for, the top women's championship, but she's still. But I honestly think where they have her now is pretty great. Like, she's with the women's mid card, and they're teasing a match with her and Willow Nightingale, which hopefully will, kind of, raise the stock for Willow. It was kind of, I would say she's always had a lot of potential with AEW, but they never book her in a great way. Like, she always gets stuck with like some tag team partner when she should be a singles act. But yeah, I think her being in the mid card also works great for everyone else who's kind of involved with that, like Statlander, Hart, Blue. Like, I have a lot of hope for where she's at, despite the fact that like when it comes to the three signees, I do like I do believe all three of them are great wrestlers. I'm not a huge fan of all three. Okada might be the one that I'm like the most fan of, but even then, like, he's great. Don't get me wrong. Like, all three of them are really great. I do have my problems with Ospreay. Ospreay is a very divisive wrestler when it comes to the pro wrestling community. The best way I can put it is that watching a Will Ospreay match for me is just like, it's great. Like, overall, it can be a great match, but there's always some things here and there where it just kind of becomes a little silly, and I kind of like my disbelief of this being a real match, like this real competition between two people, just kind of goes away, and it just makes me feel like I'm watching something very silly. And I'm fine with silly stuff happening in wrestling, but it depends on where it is. Like, if you're trying to make me care about this match in a serious way, I'm not gonna want like a bunch of silly stuff all over the place. But with Osprey, that's kind of what you get. Even if it's supposed to be a serious match, there might be a few spots here and there that kind of take you out of it, of just like overselling or just no selling at all. And with Mercedes Monet, I do believe she's one of the greatest female wrestlers in the world, but she's never been a personal favorite of mine. But at the end of the day, she's still very good at what she does. And it's kind of the same with Okada. He's one of the greatest wrestlers in the world today, but I never been like a huge fan of his work. In a way of just like, I respect what they do, but they're not like three wrestlers that are gonna get me to watch. But at the same time, I'm just one person. These are still very big names in the pro wrestling community who probably will draw more eyes to AEW. I'm gonna get back to this article. If you listen to Osprey and Monet talk about why they signed with AEW, a few clear advantages appear to arise. Some of it is similar to what WCW had in the past. For starters, Khan always seems to go the extra mile on the financial terms, and like WCW, AEW isn't reliant on downside guarantees. And you are getting that money for a much, much lighter schedule, as AEW tapes on Wednesday and Saturday, while WWE's schedule is far less grueling than in the past, top stars still had to make the weekly house show loops that don't really exist in AEW, despite the fact that they did try that at one point and it was really bad for them. It does go to show like not everyone can necessarily do like the house show schedule, which is perfectly fine. Like I feel like WWE could lighten up every now and again to help their talent out. AEW's reduced schedule means talent can be with their families more, and Khan can give international stars such as Ospreay the option to remain living in the UK with his girlfriend and their stepson. Ospreay said on the Talk Is Jericho podcast that the offers from AEW and WWE were night and day. Even in differences of what they were offering and what AEW was offering, AEW was way better. Ospreay said, the scheduling, everything about AEW was completely the right option for me. It was always you can be a superstar in WWE and be famous, but it's not as good a pay and it's not as kind a schedule. I respect everyone there doing it, but it's not for me. And that's totally fair. Like, if the schedule is just not for you, it's just not for you. And the thing is, like, the great thing about AEW is that even though it is kind of like the second biggest company when it comes to like US pro wrestling companies, it still is probably the closest anyone has ever gotten to matching WWE numbers in terms of, viewership, in terms of attendance, shit like that. Like, and, if the money, and especially in pay, like, it's great that these, talent have another place to go where they can make, good money while not necessarily need to work the grueling schedule of WWE. But some people, some talent like doing the house show schedule, and while the pay might not be as good as AEW, it probably like the better opportunities that they can get. There's more eyes on them. It's better to like grow your profile as a wrestler with that. Yeah, different boats, different strokes. I think the saying is, everyone has their own preference, like their own preferences with schedules. It brings me to something Monet, who has mentioned going to AEW eventually, brought up often last week. And also, like, yeah, I did hear about this. She mentioned that she possibly is going to go back to WWE at some point in the future. And it was like right before her debut. And apparently, some people didn't like her saying that. More than likely, that was Jericho, but that's just speculation. Because Jericho is just, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if Jericho complained about it because he's kind of a whiny bitch sometimes. I don't even think that's necessarily a bad thing. Like, she really got her rise. Like she really built up her name with WWE. I wouldn't be surprised if she would go back. The only time I feel like she probably wouldn't have gone back is if McMahon was still in power. But who knows? Maybe with Triple H involved, Naomi went back. It could change things. But she's with AEW now, and hopefully she does some big things over there as well. AEW affords her the chance to take her revolution global. What she means is that when you sign with AEW, unlike in WWE, you also have a much greater freedom to work with other companies. It means you work with New Japan and CMLL in Mexico and pop into GCW and other independent promotions. For Ospreay and Okada, it allows them to keep a small tether to the promotion they left. Which I did think it was funny because Tetsuya Naito, who is the current IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, he actually had something to say about Okada being in AEW. Naito had a comment about Okada signing with AEW. I'm just gonna read it out right now. I was surprised to see his comments about leaving the organization and the tears in his eyes, because I thought he would go farther away. I honestly thought that I would be closer than I thought. Then I wondered what the tears were for in Will Ospreay at the San Jose tournament in January. Basically, he's saying I don't know why why they were very upset about this, if they were just kind of going with a promotion that works with New Japan a lot anyways. They have a pay-per-view exclusively to be a crossover. Like AEW has a pay-per-view, Forbidden Door, that is literally just AEW wrestlers versus New Japan wrestlers. That's it. They have a working relationship with AEW. So it's just kind of it's like if your friend told you they were moving and they made this big stink about it, and then you just learned that they moved to the door, they moved to the house right next door. They made a big fuss being like, oh, I'll never see you again. And then they just moved another house like right next door to their previous one. It's just kind of like, what's the big fuss about this? Like, you're gonna be working with us eventually, anyways. It's not like you're not moving states or like across like across the country. You're just literally just moving a little bit. I just kind of got a laugh out of that comment where he was just like what are these tears for? Like, you're gonna see us again. I thought it was funny going back to the article, but also I mean honestly, this is something that even WWE is kind of getting better with, despite the fact that I feel like they could do it a little bit more so. So, like, there was recent news that WWE was allowing Shayna Baszler to work with GCW for Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. She's facing TNA wrestler Masha Slamovich. Also, WWE and TNA have worked in the past pretty recently. They worked in like 2022 for the Royal Rumble with Mickie James. They worked just this year with TNA for the Women's Royal Rumble with Jordan Grace. They also allowed they also allowed Shinsuke Nakamura to wrestle, the Great Muta at Pro Wrestling Noah. They allowed Carl Anderson to work Wrestle Kingdom when he was the New Japan Never Openweight champion. Like, they're open to working with, companies, like other companies. But with AEW, they're a lot more open. With AEW, with WWE, it's kind of like you have to like knock on the door and say a secret password just to like get the chance to work with them. AEW, despite the fact that they have a pay-per-view called Forbidden Door, it's kind of open doors when it comes to working with other companies. So I can definitely see like if you want to work with other companies, it would be great to work with AEW. And if you're just like, fine, no, I'm fine, I just want to work with WWE. Again, it's just people preferences. But even then, WWE is doing pretty good at being global recently. I mean, just last year, where they had pay per views in Canada, they had pay per views in Puerto Rico, London, like England. I mean, they always have their, Saudi shows. I mean, they have a pay per view coming up this year in Germany, Bash in Berlin. Also, just had a pay per view with Elimination Chamber in Australia. Like, they've been doing a good job at staying global with their events, but it is very different from how AEW does it. You have a chance to do more than make $1 billion company in WWE richer, but rather enrich the foundation of the profession across different promotions to help maintain this fruitful landscape for other performers, all while shining a light on talent not on TV weekly in the US, which is true. Like, it is very much true. While I'm not like a big fan of the AEW product, I'm still glad that it exists, and I hope, the best for it. I hope it continues to grow because competition is good. Competition, regardless of the industry, is great. Well, I might not, be a fan of the AEW product. I also really like TNA. I really like the TNA product, and I hope they grow with this new rebrand and all the talent they've been getting and building up over the last few years, like Josh Alexander, Hammerstone, Nick Nemeth. Like, I would love to see, and that's just with the men. They have a great women's division too, like Jordan Grace. They just got Dana Brooke in there, who has been doing a pretty good job. I really like her character there. They have a great tag team division, ABC, Grizzled Young Veterans, Motor City Machine Guns. It's a really good time to get in pro wrestling right now because there's so many like good options. Like, if you like the New Japan product, despite the fact that it's not, in my personal opinion, it's not that great right now, you can get into New Japan. You can get into CMLL. You can get into GCW if you like very extreme like wrestling. You can get into AEW, WWE, doesn't matter. Like, it's a great time to get in pro wrestling because there's so many options. The silver lining for WWE is it can be less reliant than AEW on free agency for talent because its NXT and performance center system will allow it to keep building its new stars in-house. Which is also true. I do have a coworker who also watches pro wrestling, and we were kind of talking about this, and like, he made a point to me. He was just like, um, AEW is kind of focusing on like the big stars now, while WWE is kind of building up like the new big stars, which I feel like is very much like is a shift that I've been kind of noticing with WWE. is that a lot of their older, I feel like a lot of their bigger names are kind of almost on the way out in like the next few years. So you can kind of tell they're trying to build up some new ones. And I feel like they have like a really good selection when it comes to big names that they can grow in the next few years. Just with like Braun Breaker, Carmelo Hayes, LA Knight, despite being older, like I think he's in his 40s. I feel like you know is just with like the amount of fan support that he has, could have a really like great career as a main eventer. I know not a lot of people like him that much. I'm gonna be honest, just from the talk that I see online. But I do like Damian Priest. Feel like they've been doing a good job at making him like a big name. Just in terms of like other people coming up. I mean, in the women's division, Roxanne Perez would be great. Lyra Valkyria, Tiffany Stratton. And in tag team wrestling, you got like the Creed brothers. Honestly, they've been kind of struggling. I mean, NXT has been kind of struggling with its tag division. It is doing a better job right now of rebuilding it, but they do. I will say that is one thing they need to kind of focus on is their tag division. Same with AEW because AEW is having a tournament right now after Sting's retirement. He retired as AEW Tag Team Champion with Darby Allin, and they did it. And they are doing a tournament right now for who's going to be crowned the new champions after they vacated the titles. I'm gonna be honest, that tournament does not look great. There's a lot of tag teams that like have already been out of the tournament who I believe should not be out of the tournament right now, and also some tag teams who aren't in the tournament at all who really should be. Like it's really weird. They also reference that yes, Okada's close relationships with the Young Bucks was a factor, but it should all bring a moment of reflection in WWE, which is true. I honestly expected. I honestly thought Okada. There was like a good chance that Okada could either turn up in AEW or WWE. Obviously, with his connection with the Young Bucks and the Elite, that was probably gonna play more in a factor of him signing there. But I feel like with at least Okada, WWE would have tried harder to try to grab him. But at the end of the day, if he wants to work with his friends, he's gonna work with his friends. Like that's the thing. Like I don't know many other people in WWE that would. I don't know. Like his close relationship with the Young Bucks is pretty well known. So like maybe the only person you could probably argue might be Nakamura, like people that he's worked with, but like, do they really have that close relation? I don't know. I'm not here to speculate on people's relationships with other wrestlers. Everyone was kind of speculating because there were already news reports of like Okada's deal with New Japan's coming to an end, Osprey's coming to an end. Monet looks to be going to AEW. A lot of people were speculating on all these like free agents, and it all happened in a pretty short period of time. Like at least comparatively, because like it was only a few months. Osprey again was announced months ago. He just had to finish his New Japan dates, but with Okada and Monet, it was still very left up in the air. And with it happening pretty recently, it was all kind of like all at once, just this big boom in the industry of these two big names signing with AEW. Yeah, that's all I really want to talk about with that. Again, pro wrestling is really good right now. There's a lot of different options out there for people to really, get into it. So, yeah, I just wanted to leave it off there.